Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Sabbath. To introduce our topic today, we're going to start in Exodus 20. Exodus 20, verse 8. This is where we're instructed about one of the 10 commandments, the fourth commandment. Exodus 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. Verse 11, for in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. The focus of the commandment is to rest, stop working, and make the Sabbath day special. Today, however, we're going to focus on verse 9. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. Today we're going to talk about work and a godly perspective of work. We can sometimes view work as drudgery or tedious, something you have to do to earn a living, or maybe it's something to be avoided, to be relieved of, or to rest on the Sabbath, or maybe to retire from. God, however, did not originally intend for work to be a bad thing or something that we should try to avoid. With the right job, with one that suits our skills and our interests, work can be quite fulfilling. It can be creative and it can be enjoyable. We remember from Genesis that the result of the 6 days of creative labor that God took a break from on the seventh day, it was declared very good. We might also note that mankind was formed in the image of a creator and was given tasks to accomplish. Adam was instructed to be fruitful, fill the earth, subdue it, and have dominion. He was put in charge of the Garden of Eden, and he was put there and given the job of cultivating it and keeping it. Terms that we might describe as work. But it was work that God intended to be creative, productive, and fulfilling. The point is, God originally gave man the gift of work as something good, something positive. Things, of course, changed somewhat when Adam and Eve disobeyed. The ground became more difficult to cultivate. There were thorns and thistles to deal with, and it took serious sweat and toil to raise food. Because of disobedience to God, we now live in a world where almost every job is going to have serious challenges, difficulties, and a certain amount of unpleasantness. So for the remainder of the message, we're going to consider what God expects of us as workers and how to meet some of the challenges and difficulties of our jobs with what we'll call a godly work ethic. Employers, of course, are always looking for employees who have a good, strong work ethic, employees who are responsible, who will work hard at their jobs, show up on time, etc. When I was growing up, there were aspects of the environment that I grew up in that at that time naturally developed me, and a lot of people of my generation, to develop some aspects of a good work ethic. Since I grew up in the days before child labor laws got as strict as they are right now, and since I had parents who grew up in the Depression, I was fortunate to learn a few things about work ethic principles fairly early in life. When I was 12 years old, and my brother was only 10, my parents determined that it was time for us to get summer jobs. I don't remember exactly, but I think we got up about 6 a.m. It was pretty early. We ate breakfast, we took sack lunches that our mother had made for us, and we walked down to the end of the block and waited on the corner. And there at about 7 o'clock, we got on a dilapidated old school bus that carried us about 3 miles east of Salem on Sunnyview Road, out into the countryside to Wenger's strawberry field. And there, with about 30 other kids, some teenagers, we started picking strawberries. It was hard work. It was dirty work. After lunch, it really got hot. But it was a good experience. It was good to have a job like that as a first job. It helped condition our perspective of what work was. And for one thing, we were paid not by the hour, but by how productive we were. And that was a good lesson. You couldn't just put in time and expect to be paid. We got paid by the amount of strawberries we picked. And the harder you worked, the more you picked, the more money you got paid. At that time, it was 50 cents a crate. A crate held, I think, 12 of those little baskets. Ed must have had experience with that, and a few others of you. But 50 cents a crate, and on a good day, I could pick maybe 6 crates and earn $3, which seemed like a lot of money at that time. But being paid that way early in life helped condition us to work hard, even when it was difficult, gritty, grimy, uncomfortable work. Hard work paid off, laziness did not. It also helped build our confidence. Found out that, we could actually do something difficult and unpleasant. We could stick it out. It required serious effort and perseverance, and maybe we had that in us. There were other things, though, I still had to learn. I learned some of those things later in life, and they were things that went beyond just hard work and perseverance, things that composed what we, again, might call a godly work ethic. So I'm going to present 7 things to keep in mind in developing a godly work ethic. Some of these points will overlap with what our society would call a regular, good, strong work ethic. But some go beyond that and are principles that I wish I had learned and maybe applied a little earlier in my career as a teacher. If you're taking notes, you might want to just write a godly work ethic, 7 points. 7 points to keep in mind. Number 1, God expects us to work. We noted earlier that God says that we are to work 6 days and then rest the 7th. If we're physically able, work is something God expects of us. 2 Thessalonians 3:10 reinforces this. And in fact, we'll notice what Paul tells the Thessalonians, who might have been dealing with a laziness problem at that time. 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 10, or we'll start there anyway. For even when we were with you, we commanded you this: if anyone will not work, neither shall he eat. For we hear that there are some who walk among you in a disorderly manner, not working at all, but are busybodies. God doesn't want us to have an entitlement mentality. We're not entitled to eat if we don't work. Yes, we understand that there are the widows, the orphans, and those with disabilities for whom the expectations are different. But those who are physically capable are expected to work. Might not be for a paycheck, and might not be outside the home, but we are expected to be productive and to work hard. We should work with the attitude of whatever your hand finds to do, you do it with all your might. And if we need any motivation to work hard, we have point number 2. Point number 2. We are to work as though God is our employer. We see that in Ephesians 5, verse 6, or starting at verse 6. If we work as though God is our employer, it should help prod us to be good, diligent workers. Ephesians 5, verse 6, bondservants, employees, that is, be obedient to those who are your masters according to the flesh. That is, do as your employer says, provided it's within God's law. So obey your masters with fear and trembling. Show them respect in sincerity of heart as to Christ. Serve them as sincerely as you would Jesus. Verse 6, not with eye service as men pleasers, not just when the boss is watching you, but as bondservants, as employees of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, working heartily, with enthusiasm. Verse 7, with goodwill, doing service as to the Lord, and not to men, knowing that whatever good anyone does, he will receive the same from the Lord, whether he is a slave or free. God will eventually reward us for our efforts. I guess whether we're a slave and we're not paid, or we're free and we do get paid. We also need to consider 1 Peter 2, verse 18. So what if you have a bad boss? Somebody who's really difficult to work for. Has that ever happened to anybody out there? Have you ever had a bad boss? Oh, Ben Storrs is his own boss, right? Okay. 1 Peter 2:18, servants, be submissive to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the harsh. Tough instruction there. For this is commendable, if because of conscience toward God one endures grief, suffering wrongfully. In other words, God commends those who work conscientiously, even when the boss is harsh, and the job is difficult and unpleasant. Doesn't mean you can't look for a different job, though. Verse 3. Point number 3. Number 3, work is a means of helping others. You've got to keep that in mind. It's not just a means of earning yourself a paycheck. Our motivation for working is not just to make money for ourselves. Work in itself is service. It's serving or providing a product to help others. Yes, working does allow us to earn money. But even then, it's money that we can tithe on, that we can help the church with, and we can use to help others in need. Let's notice Ephesians 4, verse 28. Ephesians 4:28. The context here is interesting, but we'll notice Paul's instruction. Ephesians 4, verse 28, let him who stole steal no longer, but rather let him labor, working with his hands what is good, working at a legitimate job, that he may have something to give him who has need. Paul has a similar message in Acts 20, starting in verse 33. And here Paul is giving a goodbye address to the church brethren in Ephesus. Acts 20, verse 33 through 35. I have coveted no one's silver or gold or apparel. Paul didn't work to get rich. Verse 34, yes, you yourselves know that these hands, Paul's hands, have provided for my necessities and for those who are with me. Paul worked to support himself and those with him. Verse 35, I've shown you in every way by laboring like this that you must support the weak. And remember the words of the Lord Jesus that he said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. Our work can allow us to be generous givers and to help those in need. Point number 4. Could have worked more on this one. A good worker is not a complainer. We'll turn to Philippians 2, verses 14 and 15. You ever had a coworker who's always grumbling and finding fault, complaining? It's not pleasant, and this is one where I'll have to admit that I've been that coworker at times. It's hard not to be when you work in a public school. Looking back, though, instead of complaining, I should have just stayed positive and worked to make the best of a lot of difficult situations. But again, like I said, it wasn't easy because some of us as teachers, we had a habit of, we kind of fed on each other, I think, as teachers that way. Anyway, Philippians 2, verses 14 through 15. Do all things without complaining and disputing. Other translations use the words grumbling and arguing. Verse 15, that you may become blameless and harmless, children of God without fault in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights of the world. Another thing that we're going to come back to here in a little bit. But don't be a complainer or a problem creator. If something isn't right, stay positive and try to be a problem solver, which is related to my next point. Point number 5. A good worker shows initiative. A good worker shows initiative. Notice Luke chapter 17, Luke 17:10. Jesus makes a statement that we can apply here. Luke 17, verse 10, Jesus says, so likewise you, when you have done all those things which are commanded, say, we are unprofitable servants. We have done what was our duty to do. Initiative involves going beyond the call of duty. It involves going the extra mile if possible. Jesus says, whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. It's Matthew 5:41 for reference. Good work ethic means that we try to do more than what's required. And showing initiative means seeing what needs to be done and then doing it without having to be told. If the tasks we've been given to do has been completed, if the task that we're paid to do has been completed, we find something else to do to be productive. We don't just sit there figuring, well, I'm just being paid here for the boss to use up my valuable time. We don't have that kind of attitude. We try to do something helpful. We clean the workspace. We empty the trash. We sweep the floor. We do something, and that's what initiative is. Number 6, a good worker shows up consistently and on time. They're dependable. It's part of the all things being done decently and in order, 1 Corinthians 14:40. It's also common courtesy. Showing up for work late is an obvious annoyance and can cause problems. It can hold up a job that needs to be done. And finally, if we have a godly work ethic, we recognize that work is an opportunity to let our light shine. Matthew 5, verses 14 through 16. Here Jesus reminds us of our responsibility to reflect well on God and His church. In almost every job, we interact with people, our coworkers, bosses, clients, customers, and in doing so, we can apply God's words. Matthew 5, verses 14 through 16. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. As lights to the world, we should be noticeably different in a positive way from those in the world around us. The Apostle Paul reminds us that we are to be ambassadors for Christ. We represent Christ and His church. And one way in which we do this is in our conduct at work. With that in mind, I want to read portions of an email letter that I read in a message that I gave a little over 10 years ago, but I thought it was worth repeating. Some of you weren't here, and some of you were fairly young, but it was a worthwhile message. It was sent by a co-worker to one of our members here. It was on the occasion of his retirement in 2013, after over 35 years on the job. And this is what the co-worker wrote to our member. I believe you, the member, are one of only 2 people who have been here at this particular job since I started nearly 29 years ago. And the other one, Connie, another co-worker, will also soon be retiring. We've been through a lot of events and changes over these many years. Team building, reorganizations, staff reductions, and a multitude of managers have come and gone. Introduction of ID badges, and many changes to policies and procedures. Some of the things that have not changed, however, are your unfailing courtesy, exemplary attendance, and consistently positive attitude. In all those decades, I cannot recall witnessing a single occasion on which you lost your temper, used profanity, or said an unkind word about anyone. Although I suspect certain situations have sincerely tried your patience on thousands of occasions. You instead have simply focused on getting the job done, avoiding discord, and maintaining a cordial working relationship with everyone. That says something about your character. It has been a privilege working with you. I wish you a long, healthy, and happy retirement, and hope you will come back to visit us periodically. Take care. And then it's signed by the coworker. I wish that could have been said about me. It's not me. So obviously our member made a very favorable impression and had been a light to at least one and probably many of his coworkers over the years. He certainly seems to have demonstrated a godly work ethic. But what if you don't have a job right now? Maybe you're too young to be employed. But do you have chores? Have your parents given you chores to do? Can you do your chores, or do you do your chores with a godly work ethic? What if you're a student in school? Can you view being a student as your job? Can you take on your studies? Can you tackle your studies with a godly work ethic? What if we're retired? Can we still find ways to be productive and serve? I'm retired, and I get a good income, whether I work or not, whether I'm productive or not. And sometimes it's easy to get sidetracked and get distracted by things that really are not too productive. So I have to watch that myself. And can we still find ways to be productive and serve? Maybe it's part-time work. Maybe it's volunteering. Our responsibilities and abilities do change as we get older. But there are always opportunities and needs to fill in the church. Brethren, work is a part of all of our lives, no matter what stage of life we're in, whether we're students, obtaining an education, working at home, managing a household, employed in a career, or retired. No matter how we view it, work is something that God expects us to do with a positive attitude and in a manner that pleases Him. So let's strive to do that. Let's strive for a godly work ethic in all we do.